Fire. Exploding head. High voltage? Backhand index pointing right. Seamstress turned cook arrived at the frontier seeking work, but faced a harsh cowboy next door. The wind carried dust across the wide empty street. Her boots crunched against the gravel as she stepped down from the wagon. The small town looked half asleep, wooden porches sagging under the weight of years. She clutched her satchel tighter, the leather warm beneath her sweating palm. Her dress, once neat, now smelled of smoke from the long journey. Eyes followed her from shadowed corners, men with hats pulled low and women peering from behind curtains. The saloon doors creaked open, laughter spilling out, sharp and careless. She forced her breath to steady. A new life, she told herself. She was no longer only a seamstress. She had recipes, skill, the will to survive. Then she saw him. The cowboy leaning against the post of the boarding house porch. Tall, broad shoulders, boots caked with mud, his shirt open at the collar. His gaze caught hers and did not let go. The air thickened between them. She shifted her satchel and tried to pass, but his voice stopped her. Frontier is no place for delicate hands. His tone was low, sharp like a blade dragged across stone. Her throat tightened. She managed a small reply, though her voice cracked. I came here to work, not to be judged. His smile did not reach his eyes. He stepped closer, and the scent of tobacco mixed with leather filled her nose. The ground seemed to tilt beneath her boots. A horse stamped nearby, restless, as if sensing tension. The sun lowered, shadows stretching long and crooked across the street. He leaned so near she could hear the rasp of his breath. Work is earned here, with blood or with fire. Her stomach turned cold. For the first time, she felt the weight of every mile she had traveled pressing down on her chest. And then, a sudden sound split the silence behind her. A door slammed. A voice she did not recognize shouted her name. She spun around, heart hammering against her ribs. The door of the old inn stood wide, its frame rattling from the force. A man stood there, face pale, hair wild as though he had run through a storm. His voice cracked when he called again. Get inside, now. The cowboy's smirk faltered, just for an instant. But that instant was enough to twist her breath into a knot. The stranger at the door waved urgently, his eyes darting to the cowboy's hand. Only then did she notice the dull glint of iron resting against his hip. Her mouth went dry, the taste of dust turning bitter on her tongue. The cowboy straightened, slow, deliberate, like a wolf scenting prey. His boots struck the porch hard as he stepped down into the street. Each sound echoed through her skull. The man at the door spoke again, quieter now, yet with a tremor of fear. He knows who you are. The words slammed into her chest, leaving her unsteady. She did not know what he meant. But the cowboy's stare told her he did. And in that stare lay something dark, something she had no name for. Her pulse thundered so loud she could barely hear the creak of the swinging sign above. The cowboy's shadow stretched across the dirt, long and jagged, swallowing her own. Her satchel slipped from her grasp and thudded onto the ground. The sound was small, but in the silence it felt like a gunshot. The man at the door stepped forward, one hand hidden behind his coat. The cowboy's fingers brushed the handle of his revolver. Her breath caught, her chest aching as if the air had turned solid. The onlookers, those faces in the windows, those figures in the alleys, vanished back into the dark. No one would interfere. The frontier belonged to men like him. The cowboy's voice came low, like a growl pulled from the earth itself. You should never have come here. Her legs trembled, the ground beneath her boots shifting like sand. The stranger at the door finally revealed what he carried. A folded scrap of paper, yellow with age, edges torn and curling. He held it high, as if it burned in his hand. The cowboy froze. His eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched. The paper fluttered in the dry wind. And she knew, without understanding how, that whatever was written there was the reason for the fear pressing down on every soul in that street. The paper snapped in the wind, its fragile edges trembling like a wounded bird. her eyes fixed on it, though she could not yet read the words. The cowboy's hand lifted from his revolver, slow, reluctant, as though pried away by unseen force. His boots dug into the dirt, every muscle in his frame taut and ready. The man holding the paper did not flinch. His voice, strained but steady, carried across the stillness. "You remember this, do you not?" The cowboy's lips parted, but no sound came. A silence heavier than gunfire spread through the street. Her stomach twisted, the taste of iron rising at the back of her throat. She wanted to speak, to demand answers, but her tongue lay heavy, useless. The paper unfurled slightly, enough for a blackened mark to show. A seal, burned into the corner, charred like the edge of a brand. The cowboy's face hardened, yet his eyes betrayed something raw. Recognition. Fear. Guilt. And as she stared at the mark, some distant memory stirred inside her, a half-forgotten night, the scent of smoke, the echo of screams she had buried deep within her mind. Her knees weakened, and she grasped the porch post to steady herself. The stranger's words cut the air like a blade. "She has the right to know what you did." The world seemed to tilt, every sound distant except the rush of blood in her ears. The cowboy's jaw worked, muscles twitching as if he fought against words clawing their way up his throat. His eyes darted to her, then back to the paper, then to the faces hidden in the shadows. No one moved. The wind tugged at her hair, dry strands brushing against her lips. Her chest rose and fell too fast, each breath sharp as a knife. What did he do?" she managed, her voice thin but cutting through the silence. The stranger stepped closer, holding the paper like proof carved from bone. "This is the record," he said, his tone cold, final. "Names. Places. The fire that swallowed your town." Her heart stuttered, missing a beat, before slamming back against her ribs. The memory she had buried surged forward, flames roaring in the night, smoke clawing at the sky, her hands raw from pulling cloth and children from the inferno. Her voice cracked. "You mean, he was there?" The cowboy finally spoke, his words low, gravel thick in his throat. "I was not only there." He paused, his shadow looming over her. "I lit the first match." Her breath vanished as if the very air had been stolen from her lungs. The ground beneath her seemed to sway, the dust spinning into a blur. Her hands shook, clutching the wooden post until splinters bit into her skin. The cowboy's confession clung to the air, heavier than gun smoke. She stared at him, but all she could see was fire. Flames leaping, crackling, devouring lives she could not save. The stranger's hand trembled too, but he did not lower the paper. Gasps drifted from hidden corners, proof that others had heard. The cowboy's face twisted, pride and shame locked in a vicious battle. "You do not understand," he growled, though the edge in his voice faltered. Her voice came raw, trembling but fierce. "Then make me understand, before I tear the truth out of you myself." The cowboy took a step forward, and for the first time his boots left no sound. Every nerve in her body screamed to run. But her feet refused. The stranger beside her whispered, urgent. "If you stay, you will learn it all. If you flee, you will never rest." Her eyes burned with unshed tears, the weight of choice crushing her chest. And the cowboy. He slowly pulled something from his coat pocket. Not a weapon. A charred scrap of cloth. Small. Faded. Stiff with soot. He held it out toward her with a hand that trembled. Her heart lurched as she recognized the pattern stitched into the fabric. It was from the dress she had sewn years ago. The one her younger sister wore the night she was lost in the fire. "You said." The sight of the fabric split her heart open like a blade through cloth. Her knees nearly gave way, but rage held her upright. Her sister's laughter echoed in her skull, sweet and fragile, crushed now beneath the memory of screams. The cowboy's hand shook harder, the cloth trembling between his fingers. "I kept it," he said, voice rough, as though every word dragged against stone. "Not as a trophy, but as a curse." Her throat burned, torn between sob and fury. "You took her from me," she whispered, though the words scraped raw against her tongue. The stranger's jaw tightened, his eyes never leaving the cowboy. Why show it now? After all these years, he demanded. The cowboy looked at her, his eyes dark, hollow, pleading. Because she was not meant to die. None of them were. The street seemed to shrink, the world closing in. What do you mean? She asked, her voice trembling, desperate, terrified. The cowboy drew a slow, shuddering breath. I lit the fire. His gaze fell to the dust. Shame pulling his head low. The words hung heavy in the air, sinking into her like stones dropped into water. She felt the truth unraveling, a thread pulled from a seam too tight to hold. The cowboy stood bare before her, not only a villain but a broken man bound by another's command. Her chest heaved, torn between fury and the fragile spark of understanding. The stranger lowered the paper, his hand steady now. You have carried this long enough, he said firmly. The cowboy's eyes lifted to hers, waiting, bracing, as if her judgment alone could strike him down. She closed her fingers around the charred cloth, pressing it to her heart. The fabric was cold, stiff with soot, but it carried her sister's memory still. Her voice steadied, clear in the silent street. The fire took everything. But I will not let it take the rest of me. The cowboy's shoulders sagged, his fight drained, his secrets finally bared to the world. The stranger touched her arm gently, guiding her toward the open door. The town watched in silence, faces pressed to glass, shadows frozen on porches. She did not look back. The frontier had tried to break her, but she walked on. Carrying grief, carrying truth, carrying the strength to begin again. And behind her, the cowboy's figure lingered in the dust, swallowed by the setting sun. But I was not the one who ordered it.